progressive doggy? Are you a progressive doggy? She is. Hi, my name is Andy. Thank you for joining me on my channel today. Let's kind of talk about why you selected on this video. And that has to do with an article that I was sent by one of you guys, actually, written by Ezra Klein. Now, if you don't know who Ezra Klein is, that's fine. Wouldn't blame you. Ezra Klein is a self-described progressive. He is the co-founder of Vox. He is a political journalist. That's who he is. By the way, the article is linked in the description box below. I do encourage you to read it. So the article is an op-ed, and it's about California as a progressive state, or maybe not a progressive state. The full title of the article is California is Making Liberals Squirm. If progressivism can't work here, why should the country believe it should work anywhere else? That's a weird way to ask that question, but we'll go with it. Here's the rundown of the article. Ezra Klein begins with a case of failed progressivism pertaining to the San Francisco Board of Education. Now, the Board of Education voted to rename schools that were previously named after racists. They also decided to rename schools that had previously been named after a senator named Dianne Feinstein, who is also a racist, allegedly. The school board also decided to rename schools that had previously been named after Abraham Lincoln. Now, it's America, and political bodies often try to appease racists and, more recently, anti-racists alike. So removing Abraham Lincoln's name from any specific school is quite on brand. However, people, including Ezra Klein, are utterly befuddled by the renaming of schools that remain closed during a global pandemic. He goes on to argue that, after all, poor children, specifically racial minorities, are hurt most during this pandemic and with the school closures, because the school systems do offer a lot of assistance to these children, whether it's in the form of food programs or in the form of after-school programs. The argument here is that California is neglecting its progressivism by keeping these public school systems closed during the global pandemic, which I feel like I'm going to have to keep reminding everybody throughout this video. Ezra Klein does mention that if the proper precautions and guidelines are followed, school systems can reopen, as the guidelines can help minimize the spread of the virus. And again, consider these poor children who do rely on the public school systems to essentially survive. The implication here is that the progressive solution is to open the school systems as these closures are hurting these poor children. Another instance of failed progressivism that Klein cites is the poverty rate in the state of California, which has the highest poverty rate in the country. While California is a largely democratically run state, the political system doesn't really appear to be working for the people, especially the people the Democrats claim to actually give back. By the way, this really isn't just a California problem. My hair's a mess. I love it. Pretty much every government throughout the nation isn't really working on behalf of the people who elected their officials to run said government. But I digress. In addition to the poverty rate, housing is arguably unaffordable, as the state holds 25% of the nation's homeless population within their borders. The progressive solution that he cites, which ultimately failed due to the fact that the state legislature season ended before the bill could be finalized, was to allow more homes to be built. Private industry to the rescue. More homes being built would presumably drop the prices of existing homes, making all homes in the state more affordable, right? Now, there's another example of failed progressivism that Klein mentions, but frankly, I don't want this video to be longer than it has to be, and I really do believe that with these two examples, I can still make my point for this entire video. Anyways, Klein argues that these progressive solutions continue to fail due to the idea that the political ideology that is most prominent in the state of California is symbolically liberal, but operationally conservative. In this, Ezra Klein is arguing that California operates as a liberal stronghold in theory, but in practice, it demonstrates a strong preference towards conservatism. At the conclusion of his op-ed, he notes accurately that California is home to some of the most progressive individuals in the country, but in order to demonstrate the will of the people, California needs to, quote-unquote, do better. His words, not mine. Just do better, guys, because that certainly is a meaningful direction. Okay, where to begin with this? I want you to keep in mind that progressivism is being defined throughout the article based on the solutions being proposed to fix those problems. With that in mind, I'm going to do something that he didn't. I'm going to explicitly define progressivism. So, what is progressivism? Progressivism is a loaded term that has morphed to fit the age in which it's being considered or even discussed. Today, progressivism is an ideology on the left that believes in reformation of the social order, with the ultimate goal of creating a fairer society. Economic progressivism is based on the idea that capitalist markets with limited government regulation are inherently unfair, favoring big business, large corporations, and the wealthy. Economic progressivism can also be seen as a potential response to the treatment of social and economic issues, and these can range from environmental racism, I bumped the camera, all the way to wage slavery. It's also utilized as a counterargument to the culture of capitalism. Consider progressivism as a response to the idea of rugged individualism, again, with the entire goal of creating a fairer society. So basically, economic progressivism opposes liberalism. However, liberalism is often confused or used interchangeably with progressivism. But in actuality, they oppose each other, and do so quite vehemently. So what is liberalism? Liberals can also be supportive of this idea of a fairer society. But in actuality, the societies that end up being created through liberalisms that end up being created through liberalism are fairer, but they're not completely and totally fair. They aren't and were not designed to be so. Although economic liberals can be supportive of government regulation to a certain extent, they tend to oppose government intervention in the free market, especially when it inhibits free trade and supposed open competition. Economic liberalism is organized on individual lines. This means that the greatest possible number of economic decisions are essentially created by or expected to be created by individuals or individual households rather than by a collective body of collective institutions or organizations. Now, it would be terrible of me if I failed to mention and define neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is simply the modernization of liberalism. It is generally associated with policies of economic liberalization, and these policies can include privatization, deregulation, globalization, free trade, austerity, and reductions in government spending, all in order to increase the role of the private sector in the economy and society. This is the common political and economic philosophy that is employed within the U.S. So much so that both the right and the left use this to shape their political and economic environments. In my opinion, it is actually much more difficult to differentiate between liberal governments and conservative governments within the United States because they both tend to adopt neoliberalism as their central core philosophy. However, it is remarkably easy to differentiate between neoliberalism and progressives based on their economic values alone. Neoliberals favor market-based solutions, believing that laissez-faire capitalism will somehow create social equality. They also believe that democracy takes a back seat to the economic system of capitalism. Now, I know that that is a shocking claim to make, but it's a logical outcome of neoliberal philosophy if they prioritize money over social welfare. And they do. So I'm going to briefly argue why I say this. Capitalism is an economic system that requires hierarchy in order to infuse that supposed competition. Now, once competition is completely obliterated, thereby creating monopolies, there is a permanent upper class in the form of consumer-based goods and even societal structures. Democracy, on the other hand, assumes equality and equal representation. The idea of democracy and capitalism oppose each other. And due to, she's been thirsty. You're just gonna have to hear her drinking water. So let me continue. Due to the power of the purse, democracy will come secondary to the hierarchy imposed by capitalism. All you have to do is look at the fact that inequality exists. Then I hope that this argument will suddenly click for you. I am all about those light bulb moments. Now let's revisit Ezra Klein's op-ed and just go over it. As mentioned earlier, Ezra Klein is trained in political science, and he works as a political journalist. On the surface, his criticism of how the California government is operating seems very legitimate. In fact, it seems even more so coming from a self-identified progressive. But no, in fact, I would go as far as claiming that this op-ed is quite nefarious in nature. So the more I read this, the more I grew to dislike it. My criticism really does center around his lack to explicitly define progressivism, and his negligence in using progressivism and liberalism interchangeably. My dog is staring at me. As was mentioned, progressivism and liberalism, now called neoliberalism, are two different political, philosophical, and economic ideologies. Returning to his implied progressivism in the form of those solutions to some of the problems in California that Klein mentioned, the first was in relation to school system closures during a global pandemic, where he is arguing that they should immediately open in order to assist children of marginalized groups. This one kind of pisses me off, y'all. Opening schools for in-person classes is not the progressive response. Ezra. May I call you Ezra? Cool. So Ezra, the progressive solution is to pay families to stay home so that the families of marginalized groups are taken care of. Let me go a bit further. As a self-described progressive myself, I don't think the schooling system should be burdened with the job of feeding poor children. In fact, as a progressive, I believe that the existence of poverty is nonsensical. It shouldn't exist in the first place. We live in a grossly wealthy country, so poverty and being poor really doesn't make that much sense to me because we have the money to take care of everybody. I believe in an equal society, and that means caring for the needs of every member of society regardless. I think the point of society in the first place is caring for all the needs of all the members in order to increase group survival. Your progressive solution to return students to in-person learning is actually not a progressive solution. In fact, if I could recall, because this only was a few months ago, the remarkably conservative Trump administration was pushing to return children to the classroom. Another instance of it being a very difficult process to differentiate between conservatism and liberalism. Regarding your progressive response to housing and homelessness, let me offer some data points to you, Ezra. The most recent data available suggests that 1 million homes are vacant in the Golden State. As of late 2019, there were 151,278 homeless individuals in the state of California. Your progressive solution is to build new homes in the hopes that the free market will eventually drop housing costs. The political and economic belief in the free market? That's neoliberalism, my dude. The progressive solution is varied, but doesn't really involve the free market. Again, as a self-identified progressive, I believe that these homeless individuals should be given a home. Shocking. Progressives do not believe that the free market is capable of solving societal issues like homelessness. We actually have a lot of historical and current data to back up this claim. Now, before I get those people in my comment section arguing that if people are given things, they'll be lazy, to all of you, I say, I don't care. While there's no data to support your lazy argument, see what I did there? I don't believe that someone's laziness should result in them being vulnerable to the elements, which can result in death. People don't deserve to die just because you think they're lazy, period. When I try to get into the head of Ezra Klein, I do try to figure out his motives for writing this op-ed, where he only implies progressivism. And the progressive solutions he's arguing for are neoliberal solutions at best, or conservative solutions at worst. Ezra, you're trained in political science. You should know better than to equalize progressivism and neoliberalism. Further, why is it that you believe California isn't living up to the promise of progressivism that you say is liberalism when they operate as a conservative to neoliberal state? There is actually no state in the Union that operates based on progressive values. And if you continue to misidentify, probably intentionally so, neoliberal solutions as progressive solutions, the only values Americans believe would be left when neoliberalism fails, as it continues to do, is conservatism. This is primarily because Americans believe liberalism is as left as you can possibly be, because jackasses, political journalists, such as yourself, conflate progressivism with liberalism. People like you, Ezra, should actually work on clearing up these misconceptions by seriously talking about progressivism or any other type of political ideology that's available, especially on the left, and do so accurately. So Ezra, I only have one request, and that is to follow your own advice. So Ezra, do better. So that's it for me. I want to thank all of my patrons who support this channel via Patreon. If you would like to support this channel, then please consider supporting me via Patreon as well. Please consider liking, subscribing to this channel, and sharing this video or any other video that you like with family and friends. If you want to see more videos such as this one, please send me more articles or leave a comment below saying that you'd love to see more content just like this. Thank you for hanging out with me today. Bye, guys.
No.